The radio screamed through the static. "Mayday, mayday, this is SS Harlan Drake. We're surrounded by something. It's not weather." Then silence. Complete and total silence. No more words. No coordinates. No crew ever seen again. Just a last desperate broadcast, a warning too late. The Coast Guard searched for days. Planes circled the area. Not a single piece of debris was found. Not even an oil slick. It was as if the ocean had swallowed the ship whole, without a trace. 30 years later, that recording was played again. Not in some dusty archive, but on national television. Because another ship, nearly identical in build and course, had vanished the week before, almost to the hour. Same weather. Same radio cutoff. Same empty results. And just like that, the curse of the Bermuda Triangle surged back into public fear. But for one woman, it never left. Celeste Monroe had heard the first recording before anyone else. Because it was her husband, Captain Elijah Monroe, who had made that final call. He had kissed her goodbye that morning, confident and calm. He always looked like that in his Navy uniform, sharp, polished, dependable. "Routine trip, baby. 2 weeks max," he'd smiled. She remembered the strange pause in his eyes, like he knew something wasn't quite right. She had begged him to change course to avoid that part of the sea. "It's just stories, Celeste," he had chuckled. "Nothing more than sailor tales." But even back then, the triangle was no myth to her. Her uncle had been a deckhand on a freighter that disappeared in 1967. Same region, same strange reports before vanishing. She had lived with the weight of unanswered questions all her life. Now, the ghost of that fear had returned, full force. The government played it cool. No signs of foul play, likely a weather anomaly. But Celeste wasn't buying it. Especially after a sealed black box floated ashore in the Bahamas. One that hadn't even existed on the official ship's inventory. Inside, audio recordings, encrypted logs, and a voice message from Elijah meant for her. "If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it home," he said, his voice cracking. But it wasn't a storm. It wasn't human either. That single line triggered an avalanche. Conspiracy theorists exploded online. Former military whistleblowers began hinting at cover-ups. And a reclusive billionaire named Victor Harrow, who had funded the Harlan Drake's last journey, went into hiding the same week the second ship vanished. Now, journalists were connecting the dots. Pattern was emerging. But no one could agree on what exactly the pattern was, until a Navy sonar team uncovered something metallic, massive, and definitely not sunken wreckage, right in the center of the Bermuda Triangle. Something that pulsed like it was alive. And just like that, a forgotten tragedy became a national obsession. People wanted answers. Celeste wanted truth. But beneath all that, in the darkest depths of the sea, something ancient and awake was waiting. 30 years before the headlines and the conspiracies, Captain Elijah Monroe stood at the edge of the Charleston Naval Dock, scanning the horizon with a sharp gaze that betrayed none of his doubts. At 45, Elijah was a man of order, discipline, and logic, traits carved into him over 2 decades of naval service. His ship, the SS Harlan Drake, was a government-contracted cargo vessel set to escort sensitive materials through a high-risk zone. Although the exact nature of the cargo was concealed from most of the crew. It was just another assignment on paper, but to Celeste, his wife, something about it felt wrong. "You're not a superstitious man, Elijah," she said that morning, tying his necktie for him with shaky hands. "But I need you to promise me something. If anything feels off, you turn that ship around. Please." Elijah smiled, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "I've never let the ocean beat me, baby. I'm not about to start now." Celeste watched him walk away with their son Daniel in her arms, unaware it would be the last time she saw him in person. Back then, the mission had been classified as a simple cargo run. No one mentioned the Bermuda Triangle. No one mentioned the strange failures of past expeditions on similar routes. And certainly no one mentioned the previous ship that had vanished in those same waters, under the same sponsor, Victor Harrow. Victor was a billionaire industrialist whose company, Harrowtech Global, had a long history of offshore scientific projects. Cold, calculating, and always shrouded in secrecy, Victor had been personally involved in selecting the route for Elijah's ship. When Celeste questioned him weeks before the voyage, he brushed her off. "Your husband will be fine. Our vessels are the safest in the world. Don't let ghost stories scare you." But ghost stories were rooted in something. Celeste's uncle, Samuel Carter, had gone missing aboard the SS Montgomery in 1967. He was just 21 at the time, a young black man working his first maritime job. His ship had sent out a scrambled message similar to Elijah's. "The lights, they're not stars," the transmission had said, before cutting to static. No one ever found his body. As Elijah's ship moved further into open waters, trouble began early. The weather was clear, skies blue, but the ship's compass failed within the first 48 hours. The crew, mostly experienced sailors, began reporting strange headaches and feelings of disorientation. Even Elijah felt it, though he didn't say it aloud. He wrote it in his private journal. "Something's off. Sea is calm, too calm. Birds don't fly near us. It's like we've entered a vacuum." Meanwhile, Celeste stayed glued to every weather update, every broadcast, and every whisper from the Navy. She contacted a retired Admiral, Malcolm Trenton, who once led expeditions through the Triangle during the Cold War. He reluctantly admitted they had experienced geometric distortions, brief compass flips, and radar echoes that didn't match any known technology. "But we were told to drop it," he added. "Too many eyes watching." Back aboard the SS Harlan Drake, tensions rose. One sailor swore he saw something beneath the ship, a glowing shape the size of a city block, moving with them. Another claimed his dreams were being manipulated, always ending with the same word whispered, "Return." Elijah tried to calm the crew, but even he couldn't ignore the electronics failing one by one. The sonar blinked out, the radio buzzed with unreadable frequencies, and their GPS spun in circles. Then, on the fourth night, a light appeared on the horizon. Not a ship, not a flare. Something organic, humming, and pulsating like it had a heartbeat. Elijah ordered everyone to stay calm. He grabbed his binoculars and climbed to the observation deck, heart pounding. That's when he saw the impossible, a lifeboat. Adrift, empty at first glance. But as they drew closer, a figure moved. An old woman, barely conscious, clutching a rusted metal box and mumbling words no one understood. Her name was Marlene Baines, and she had been missing for 15 years. The crew brought Marlene Baines aboard with urgency and unease. She was frail, her skin weathered like driftwood, her eyes darting as if she wasn't entirely sure this ship was real. She clutched the rusted metal box to her chest like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Elijah knelt beside her, offering water and a blanket. "You're safe now," he said gently, but she only shook her head. "No one is safe here," she whispered hoarsely. "Not in their territory." Elijah tried to question her, but her mind drifted in and out of the present. She mumbled about shapes in the water, voices in the dark, and a place beneath the sea, but not of it. When asked which ship she came from, she answered with a name that hadn't been spoken in decades. The Livingston, a freighter that had vanished 15 years earlier, declared lost with all hands. No debris had ever been found, just like the others. The crew gathered around in stunned silence. Some looked at her with fear, others with pity. Elijah, though, felt something stir deep inside, dread, maybe, but also the sense that she might be the key to understanding what was happening. Marlene was taken to the infirmary to rest, but Elijah couldn't sleep that night. He reviewed the logs of the Livingston's disappearance, cross-referencing everything with their current coordinates. The numbers were too precise to ignore. They were sailing through the same corridor. Not a coincidence, someone had sent them into the exact same path. Meanwhile, on the mainland, Celeste was growing desperate. Harrowtech had gone completely silent. Her calls were ignored, Her emails bounced. She drove to their headquarters in Miami, demanding answers, only to be turned away by security. That night, in frustration, she posted Elijah's last voicemail on a private forum for maritime whistleblowers. Within hours, she got a reply from a man claiming to be a former Harrowtech engineer. He requested a call using an encrypted line. His voice shook. "You don't know what your husband was carrying. It wasn't just cargo. They were testing something that shouldn't exist." Back on the Harlan Drake, systems continued to fail. Lights flickered randomly, clocks reset themselves, and even the ship's hull groaned in unnatural ways. The crew began whispering of a curse, their fear spreading faster than Elijah could control. Then, Marlene emerged from the infirmary. Stronger, sharper. She walked to the bridge uninvited, still clutching the box. "I wasn't supposed to live," she said, her voice firmer now. "They let me go to deliver a message. This is your last warning. Leave." Elijah stared at her. "Who are they?" She opened the box. Inside were photos, blurry, grainy, but unmistakable. Glowing triangular shapes under the water, columns of light, entire ships engulfed in what looked like liquid lightning. "They don't want to be found," she said. "But Harrow, he's forcing them out." That name stopped Elijah cold. "Victor Harrow sent us." Marlene nodded slowly. "Then you're not on a mission. You're bait." Elijah's blood ran cold. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces began to fit. Harrow's eagerness, the altered route, the concealed equipment. This wasn't a simple escort job. This was a provocation. Outside, the sea went still, eerily, deathly still. No waves, no wind. A thick mist began rolling in, not from the sky, but from the water itself. It coiled like smoke, unnatural and silent. Then the lights returned. Not on the ship, but deep below it. Moving. Elijah knew then this was no weather anomaly. This was contact. The mist swallowed the ship in silence. Every crew member stood frozen, eyes wide, hearts racing. The lights beneath them pulsed like a heartbeat, soft, steady, and alive. Elijah stared into the water, watching the impossible unfold. Shapes shifted just below the surface, massive and fluid, too symmetrical to be organic, too graceful to be mechanical. It was like something was watching them, measuring them, waiting. Inside the ship, panic started to grow. The first officer, Collins, whispered, "Captain, what are your orders?" But Elijah had no answer. He was still trying to understand whether they had crossed into some unnatural storm, or something far worse. He turned to Marlene. "What happens next?" She looked up slowly, her eyes wet but steady. "If you stay, they'll take you." "Take us where?" She didn't answer. Down in the engine room, the youngest crew member, Reyes, screamed. The lights burst. Equipment began to melt, literally warp without heat. Pipes shook. Metal groaned as if the ship itself was breathing. Elijah rushed down with two others. Reyes sat in a corner, pointing at the wall. It came through the metal. I saw its face, through the steel. There was no breach, but the wall was imprinted with something that looked like a spiral. A symbol etched deep into the steel, glowing faintly. Above deck, the sky remained cloudless, stars visible, but wrong. One constellation blinked out and returned upside down. Time wasn't working normally. Celeste, still on land, received a message ping from the ship's emergency beacon. Except the timestamp said it was sent 12 hours into the future. She contacted the Navy again, but her request was shut down. "That vessel is off all radars," she was told. "It's a ghost ship now." Desperate, she called the ex-Harrowtech engineer back. He finally gave her the full truth. Victor Harrow had designed the mission to reopen something, a fracture beneath the Bermuda Triangle first discovered during an abandoned World War II experiment. The military believed it was a dimensional veil, a thin layer between realities, accessible only at very specific coordinates, and only when certain frequencies were emitted. "Your husband's ship is carrying a sonic transmitter," he said. "They're forcing it open." Celeste felt her chest tighten. "Why?" Because Harrow believes there's energy, maybe technology, something not of this world. But it doesn't want to be taken. And if they break it open completely, back on the ship, the transmitter, hidden in the cargo bay, activated on its own. A low, haunting hum vibrated through every surface. The crew couldn't shut it off. Marlene screamed, "It's the call! They're coming!" Suddenly, water burst through one of the sealed cargo doors. Not flooding, not forcefully, but rising upward like a column. In the center of it, an image appeared. Elijah himself standing, but different. Pale. Eyes black. His voice echoed, but his mouth didn't move. "You were warned. You broke the veil." Collins collapsed in terror. The spiral symbol spread across the bridge's monitors. Elijah stepped back, trembling. "Turn it off," he yelled. But it was too late. Outside, the lights rose. Dozens. Hundreds. Surrounding them in perfect formation. The ship began to lift. Not sink, but rise. Tilted upward, as if being pulled into the sky, or into something beyond human comprehension. In the chaos, Marlene grabbed Elijah's arm. "If you want one last chance to end this, you'll have to sacrifice more than the mission." The truth was no longer buried. It was awake, and it was angry. The SS Harlan Drake groaned like a dying beast as it hovered between sea and sky, caught in a force none of them could comprehend. Crew members clung to railings, their screams swallowed by the eerie silence that blanketed the mist. The lights above and below formed a perfect ring around the ship, pulsating in unison, as if judging whether humanity was worth sparing. Elijah fought to keep his footing on the slanted deck. "Shut it down! Shut everything down!" he shouted into the chaos, but the transmitter kept humming. Sparks flew from the control panels, screens shattered, and alarms blared even though no one had touched them. The ship wasn't malfunctioning, it was being reprogrammed. Not by man, but by whatever ancient force had been awakened. Down in the engine room, Reyes managed to reach the transmitter's core and pried open its protective casing. It wasn't built like anything they'd ever seen, organic, almost breathing. Inside was a single crystal, spinning mid-air, levitating with a soft blue glow. "Captain, I think it's alive," he yelled into the radio. But before Elijah could respond, the radio disintegrated in his hand, vanishing into particles. On land, Celeste watched in horror as the emergency beacon's signal suddenly split, duplicated itself. One ping was still stationary in the Atlantic, but the other was moving, fast, toward orbit. Marlene, her voice calm amidst the madness, told Elijah, "The veil is thin now. They're not just watching anymore, they're choosing." Harrow wanted to open a door. He didn't ask if we were ready to walk through. That's when the final piece fell into place. Elijah turned to the cargo hold where Victor Harrow's private crate had been stored. It hadn't been listed in any manifest. No one had been allowed to touch it. He ordered it pried open, and inside was not equipment, but a sealed chamber. Within it lay a second transmitter, larger, stronger, and already active. Harrow hadn't just wanted to open the veil. He wanted to tear it down. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the ship. Not mechanical, not human. Felt, not heard. "One will return. One will stay. Balance must remain." Marlene's eyes widened. "They did this before with me." Elijah understood. One survivor. That was the rule. The price. With no time left, he made the call. "Reyes, take the capsule. Get to the lifeboat. Marlene, go with him." "No," Marlene said. "This time I stay." She shoved the rusted metal box, the one she had carried for 15 years, into Elijah's hands. "This holds their warning. The truth. Make sure it's found." Elijah hesitated only a moment, then grabbed Reyes and pushed him toward the pod. The moment they launched, the lights pulsed violently. The ship split, not from an explosion but from pressure, as if space itself bent inward. The last thing Reyes saw before the mist closed around them was Elijah standing tall on the bridge, staring straight into the spiral of light as it descended on the ship. Then nothing. The SS Harlan Drake was gone. No wreckage. No signal. Just one lifeboat found drifting a week later, with Reyes unconscious and Marlene's rusted box sealed shut in his arms. Inside, photos, coordinates, a journal from Elijah, and an encrypted message. Victor Harrow was arrested within 24 hours. Celeste's public release of the contents led to congressional hearings, global outcry, and the permanent shutdown of Harrowtech's operations. But the truth? It was only beginning to surface. 6 months later, Celeste stood at the edge of the Atlantic, her eyes scanning the vast horizon where sea met sky, as if hoping Elijah would emerge from the mist. A memorial plaque bearing the names of the lost crew had been installed at a quiet stretch of shoreline in Charleston. Families gathered there every month, laying flowers, whispering prayers. But for Celeste, it wasn't just grief, it was a mission. The media had moved on, calling it the Harrow Scandal, packaging the story into conspiracy documentaries and viral podcasts. But none of them truly understood what had happened out there. They spoke in theories, wormholes, aliens, psychological warfare. Only she, Reyes, and Marlene knew what had really transpired. And only one of them had returned. Reyes, once a junior engineer, was now a reluctant messenger of something he barely understood. He couldn't explain how the lifeboat launched itself, how it traveled hundreds of miles without food, fuel, or navigation. But he remembered Elijah's final words as he pushed him inside. "Tell the world. We were warned." The rusted metal box Marlene gave them had become a subject of government dispute. But Celeste, smart and determined, had already copied everything inside before handing it over. The photographs, the coordinates, the spiral symbol that matched carvings found in ancient shipwrecks centuries older than any modern nation. She published it all in a digital dossier titled The Harlan Files. It spread like wildfire, not because of clicks or spectacle, but because people felt it. Something about Elijah's journal entries, the fear, the wonder, the defiance, struck a nerve across every border and belief. It wasn't science fiction. It was a man's goodbye, written in the face of an unknowable force. The Navy never officially acknowledged what happened. Harrowtech was dissolved, its assets seized, and Victor Harrow disappeared from public life, reportedly institutionalized. Some say he started speaking in riddles, others say he refused to speak at all. But Celeste didn't care. Justice, in its own strange form, had been served. She sat beside her son Daniel, now a teenager, on the same beach where she had last waved goodbye to Elijah. In his lap was the old journal, pages marked and creased from constant reading. He turned to her, eyes solemn. "Do you think he's still out there?" he asked. Celeste looked out at the water. It shimmered in the late afternoon sun, calm and endless. "I think wherever he is, he made them listen. He didn't beg. He didn't break. He stood his ground." Daniel nodded, gripping the journal tighter. "Then maybe that's why they let him speak to us. Through this." She placed her hand on his shoulder, smiling faintly through the ache. "Your father gave the world a warning. Now it's up to us to decide what we do with it." Far off in the distance, a cargo ship moved slowly across the horizon. And for a brief moment, the clouds above it swirled into the shape of a spiral, soft, subtle, and fading as quickly as it came. The ocean had not forgotten, and neither had they. If you were in her place, would you forgive the man who sent your husband to his death, or fight until the truth was seen by the world? Tell us in the comments below.